Excellent, good stuff. Right, hello, Lauren. It looks
Hello.
like it looks like we have a panel of one here, but I do believe that we've got Jan and Adrian. There's Jan,
Sorry,
and
I'm here.
there is Adrian. And have we got anybody else that? So let me just have a quick look at my list. Um, so, well, we are more than enough here, and if other people join us, then that's great. But right, I'm going to go around the panel here and ask you guys to introduce yourself. Lauren, could you start, please, by giving a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Lauren Tate. I'm a cloud solutions architect. I'm excited to be talking about serverless.
Excellent, thank you very much. Jan?
I'm looking for my mute button. Hi, my name is Yan. I'm an independent consultant, and I am also one of the AWS service heroes. So yeah, I've been working with serverless for a while.
Yeah, brilliant. And Adrian?
Surely that's an understatement of the century from Jan there, but okay. Sure, I'm Adrian from InfinityWorks. We help customers build all sorts of interesting products and do a lot of work around serverless for large and medium and small organizations, all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
Chances are you probably use something we built today, I would say.
Brilliant. Well, that's good. That's a good claim, isn't it, actually? So I'm going to let you guys go. And according to my form, Adrian, you were the last to introduce. So I'm going to ask you to start. You know the gig here. You were here last year. So kick us off. What's interesting about serverless from reInvent?
I guess it's this year. It's about the launches. So for me, there's been a kind of few quality of life things. So I liked there's a couple of improvements to DynamoDB, and one of the things that's useful for me right now is AWS backup cross-region. Weirdly, it's something I've never looked at before or been particularly interested in. But just the client that I'm working on now, that actually solves a big problem for me, is the cross-region S3 and DynamoDB backup. So although, yeah, that's a good one. There's been a few improvements on S3 this year. So the automatic tiering and Glacier, automated, fast access to S3 data in the Glacier tier is very interesting. Only as a cost reduction thing, really, rather than anything else. And again, I'm looking back from our customers, going, who's going to really benefit from that to a great extent? I'm not really sure because there's not a lot of money going on there. And I think we've seen a couple of improvements over the last year around things like ARM support, but that didn't hit the Go programming language. So although Go supports ARM, it's only kind of on a few of the runtimes. And so I was hoping to see something around that, but I haven't seen anything at reInvent this year. And I think over the last year as well, we've seen a lot of improvements on around Amplify and SAM. And I haven't used Amplify and SAM now for a couple of years. So I've been kind of entirely over on CDK. And I think the biggest improvement to my life this year over that has been CDK hot swap, this ability to run just Lambda function changes in through CDK instead of like deploying the entirety of the CloudFormation stack. So I think, still interested to see what comes out this year on new things. There's a couple of things around Lambda that I'm sure that the other folks will talk about, but yeah.
Funny you mentioned okay, I do have one thing that I think we should both mentioning as well is that the Amplify now supports the CDK so that you can actually have your Amplify stack output it to CDK, so you can essentially escape for Amplify, so closed ecosystem.
Have you looked into it though? It looks like it just exports a package that you then import into CDK. But like when I read it, I was like, oh, brilliant! Finally, I can escape Amplify. I can just kind of eject and I'll get code. But it seems like it's just a package that is kind of opaque. I've not looked into it in any more detail, but the blog post didn't look very. I was like immediately disappointed.
Really? Okay. I haven't looked into it myself. It's not something I've used because up until now, I've always been worried that, once you get into, have so many customers running the same problem that they get started on Amplify, it's great, life is amazing, and then until the moment it's not, and it becomes hell on earth because you just can't do anything because you're stuck with Amplify. And I thought, okay, CDK, it's not my choice, but at least it's a way to get all of the infrastructure out of Amplify and into something else that you can manage and customize going forward. So I think that it doesn't quite work the way I'm sort of picturing that.
Yeah, it didn't. So if you look at the CDK, if you look at the CDK from the blog post, it's basically you export an amplify blob, and then there's just like an import feature in CDK. So it's not like it's generating a CDK types for you, which is what I was hoping it would do.
Right. So literally just like one blob, one construct. Hey, here's my amplify app.
Yes.
Is that? Oh, okay. Then that's not so great. But they also mentioned you can customize the resources now. I thought that's at least that's something that's something at least. Whereas before, if you customize anything, the next time you run something, it's going to override your changes. But sounds like at least that's kind of fixed now. You can have some way to maybe export the whole thing in a way that you can tease them apart and then just, okay, I want to add a new thing here, but at least they can customize some of the resources that it's creating for you.
That does look useful. One thing I forgot to mention was Cloudwatch Evidently, which is a new feature for A/B testing. That looks pretty interesting because while you might have like a solution like you might already be using something like Adobe Analytics or Amplitude or something along those lines to do your A/B testing. Having something kind of built into AWS that does it could be kind of useful in some cases, and it looks all right. It looks like it does the job that it needs to do. So I'm kind of interested in how that will work.
Didn't they also release the? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to bring Lauren into the conversation actually, and sort of see if you've got any experience or insights on these things that Adrian and Jan have been talking about.
Yeah, so I guess different quality of life releases along the same line that Adrian said. I was quite excited by some of the Lambda SQS and Lambda changes around event filtering and kind of partial batch responses, small adjustments. Although conscious of having this conversation before a couple of the keynotes, so hopefully still some more to come.
I had to say what you're expecting, or if you an NDA briefing.
I will defer that for a few days' time if that's okay. But I thought some of the serverless offerings around serverless EMR was quite interesting, and don't want to steal the thunder of data analytics session, but kind of perhaps new ways to do interactive querying. I think was quite exciting too. So looking forward to exploring those and getting hands-on in more detail.
Yeah, there have been some interesting updates for Kinesis and DynamoDB streams, like the event filtering you mentioned. But also they finally do some kind of like a pay-per-use, pay-per-use thing for Kinesis data streams. Like people's been asking for that for years. It's not 100% like what we asked for in terms of like Firehose stream pricing, but you still at least don't have to worry about the provisioning stuff anymore. You can do the on-demand mode. You're still paying like an hourly rate, but at least you don't have to do all this other work around auto scaling and or over provision the number of shards you need by 2x, that kind of thing. So at least that makes the life a lot easier for people that are using Kinesis. I thought that was such a really big announcement.
Yeah, I think I'd be excited about it if I'd used Kinesis in the last few years. But like I've been thinking again about projects that'll make an impact on, and I can't really see anything that that my teams or that people I know have worked on that I think, oh yeah, that's really going to make a difference to them. Because I think if you're already into Kinesis, then you've already sort of suffered that problem and you've already dealt with it. And if you're not into and if you're thinking about building something else, you probably would try and avoid Kinesis perhaps, unless you have that scale.
There's a lot of people who use Kinesis as part of as a core part of data pipeline, shifting data around. The general solution is just to over provision. I was talking to a Wiley a while back on my podcast, and they are actually just overrunning the number of shards and pay extra for throughput that they don't need all the time. But then when there's a spike, they don't have to worry about auto scaling all of that. I've built some auto scaling solutions in the past, but it's a bit awkward because you've got this tension of number of API calls you can make to reduce the number of shards and things like that. So you can scale up eagerly, but when you're scaling down, you've got to be a bit more careful. Otherwise, you're going to hit that. I don't know how many calls you can make now. I think it's 32 or something like that per day. So intraday sort of scaling up and down is still quite a tricky thing to do. there's the one API call you can call to change the number of shards, but then there's no auto scaling. So again, no, it's the stuff that you don't want to be dealing with if you just want to pump some data into a stream and let it deal with it, kind of like what you do with a Firehose.
Yeah, I think these new options do add to the number of decisions you've got to make before starting to build something quite significantly. Certainly kind of taking a look at the DynamoDB pricing page and the different provisioning options there are for that, and starting to see some of those options rolled out to some of the other services as per the announcements really does kind of add to the kind of mental burden and overhead. And I think maybe that's a theme we're starting to see with serverless around the configuration complexity of that. And I'd like to see maybe some services or some offerings to help reduce that.
Yeah, I'm not sure though, because with DynamoDB, the whole on-demand mode, when it came out, it was like, yeah, another thing you can choose. But then I think pretty soon it becomes just a default. Everyone just use on-demand because it's the provisioning is just something that you don't want to think about. I think with Kinesis, the on-demand is probably going to be the same thing that initially it's going to be another thing you're going to have to decide, but then pretty soon people are just going to lean towards, well, just start with on-demand unless you really need to be more calculating about your cost and you know exactly how much throughput you need all the time. So I think that's kind of should hopefully go the same way as DynamoDB on-demand, that it just becomes a default. You don't think about it anymore.
I mean, overall, the costs I've seen on DynamoDB are generally a lot lower than sort of equivalent Postgres installations or so on. So it's sort of like people are generally kind of happy with the cost. But I could see that the infrequent access stuff could be interesting there for these kind of long kind of periods of retention. Save you some time of having to sort of think of a solution to move it away for different costs. So that could be interesting.
Okay, so there was a question that came in on Twitch just before. I put it into the Slack group, but I will read it out to you now. So could you not customize Amplify managed infrastructure via the underlying CloudFormation scripts? Hello, Manny, as well, by the way. We'll come back to you in a second. I've just pitched the question there. Adrian? Jan, yeah, pick that up.
I've wasted so many days on Amplify that I'm not going to spend any more time on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the if you think about customizing scripts that are auto-generated by some tool, you always have the same problem that whatever you customize, next time you add something to the tool that that generates the thing that you would just customize, it's going to override your changes. There's a lot of people that's done a lot of sort of manual work to work around that. I've seen people use things like, oh, okay, we're going to use a macro so that after Amplify generate the Kala information stack, one deployment, at deployment time, we run our own custom macro to change some settings that we don't like. That's kind of one of the sort of really sort of, I guess, last resort that I see people go down to, because it's just so hard to do that before the deployment step. So until now, they've introduced this thing that you can customize it, but before you could technically, but would you really do it? And is it practical to do it? Not really.
Okay.
Now you could.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Good. Right, Manny. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining. Sorry we're a bit late letting you in, but. Can you give us an introduction to yourself and a brief overview of the sorts of things you get involved in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Phil. So I'm Manny. I'm a cloud lead at And Digital in Manchester. Sort of involved with heading up accounts, in charge of some digital transformation pieces with some key enterprises at the moment. Yeah, sorry I was a bit late. I've sort of been keeping up with the stream. I was talking Kafka before.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Well, you also, you have the, in my mind, the, the respect of being the first person that I saw outside of a ComSum thing wearing a ComSum t-shirt. So, not this one. This, I think, it was our very first one, and we bumped into each other at the AWS Summit in London. And you were wearing a ComSum t-shirt. Made my absolute day, that did. So you're a legend. Right. So I'll come back to you in a second, Manny. I'll let you settle in a little bit. Lauren, I'm going to go back to you and see if you want to broaden the conversation out. You got any other new things or sessions that you want to talk about?
Yes, I guess conscious that a lot of the sessions aren't quite available yet, but a couple that I've enjoyed so far are Building Modern Cloud Applications, Think Integration by Gregor Hope, and he talks about some enterprise integration patterns and how they're implemented with various AWS serverless services, which I thought was quite interesting. And the session that I watch every year and pick up something new every time is data modeling on DynamoDB. It's a great refresher and always pick up something new.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else see that one?
I haven't seen this year's Rick Houlihan. I assume that's the Rick Houlihan one. Houlihan, sorry, right? Like I'm a big fan of that. Definitely, it's a must-watch every year. Cool.
And so, Manny, are you? How much of reInvent have you been watching from a serverless perspective, and what insights or things have you got to share about what you've heard so far?
Yeah, good question. So one of the big ones for me is the DynamoDB infrequent table access. I'm not sure if we've covered that just yet, have we?
Only in passing, really.
Right, yeah. I mean, this is quite a big one, obviously, if most of your cost on your DynamoDB tables is coming from storage, depending on how you're using your tables, of course. On most of the tables that I sort of work with, they tend to be sort of more throughput. So there's like the highest cost on there. So infrequent access isn't that exciting if that's what your workload is for, but could definitely see where this would be useful if you're storing things like application logs and that kind of thing in your Dynamo tables. It's definitely one to look at. We might have to reassess some of our other workloads and other customers based on that. In terms of actual serverless announcements, there's quite a few. Of course, we've talked about Kafka already. And if you are an enterprise that's using Kafka, and it is in lots of places already, that is probably quite exciting for you. But for me, I was quite excited by Redshift serverless. Seems to be a little bit of a sort of tactical play maybe towards other third-party cloud data warehouses that like to do per compute billing or compute, what's it called? Compute units or whatever it is. Definitely an interesting one. Want to dive into that a little bit more and find out more about it as a reInvent goes on.
What do you see the Athena ACID introduction? This idea that you can update your data in S3 as well. I think there are some restrictions on it. Like I think you can only work in Parquet format if you're doing that. But I thought that was kind of interesting because I think we've gotten kind of used to the idea that we can query data in S3 with Athena, and you can get quite far with that without having to sort of use any sort of third-party systems. And then being able to sort of modify the data on top sounds kind of interesting. I've no idea how that will work in practice. But I am kind of interested to see how it plays out. The example in the blog post of the intro is around deleting data from that database. So you can imagine if you've got like log information or you've got like a cache of customer information, you get a GDPR deletion request, being able to go through your sort of data lake stuff and delete it. I thought that was quite interesting.
Definitely.
I have no idea how I'm going to use that real.
Yeah, that's something I'll need to explore a little bit more. It's quite an interesting concept, isn't it? Normally with your data lake, just sort of shoot everything in there and then start pulling insights out of it. But actually being able to edit that data in place definitely help with some GDPR, remove my data sort of issues that you may come across.
There was another product released recently as well, which had sort of automatic masking of data in AWS Data Brew, which is kind of like the kind of opposite approach, which is as data's coming in, do the masking and sort of removal of personal data or encryption of personal data so that you can kind of crypto shred it and delete the key, or you can say, well, we haven't got your information. But this is a sort of, once it's slipped through the nets, how could you clear that up? But I'm not into the details enough yet because it's just been announced to see whether that's really going to be useful.
I also wonder how many people is going to accidentally delete data they didn't mean to as well.
Yes, delete star from where? Oops. That's a very good point.
So Jan, you specifically then, what have been your highlights from serverless reInvent so far?
Yeah, so far I think the Kinesis one, the Kinesis on demand is probably the big one for me because I use the Kinesis in quite a lot of places, and it's always been a bit of a pain in the ass to try to deal with the provisioning and decide how many shards and trying to solve the auto scaling problem. I think the other one that's really useful is the SQS redrive back to a DLQ redrive back to the source queue. I've literally had to build tools, the CLI tools to do that in the past. So having something that you can just do and trigger in the console is quite useful. I've seen a lot of people trying to basically solve the same problem different ways. So having something you can just easily trigger from the console is great. I guess there's maybe some things that it doesn't go quite as far. I've seen people cases where you want to deliver the DLQ to maybe not the production environment because you want to test the messages that you want to reprocess them in like a dev environment. So it's some cross-account delivery and stuff like that, which this tool is not going to do. But for simple cases where, oh yeah, we've got a bunch of queue messages that couldn't get processed because there's some third-party downstream system problem when you first ran. So now the system is fixed, so we can just replay the messages, just deal with it. And yeah, for those cases, this is great.
Yeah, I'm really hoping there's lots more to run with that. It looked like it was a button in the AWS console for now. But as you said, I've seen lots of scenarios where we've kind of built logic around moving messages around to source queues and performing kind of business logic and retry logic there. So yeah, we'd like to see more in that direction.
And maybe some X-ray support across SQS would be nice. I think there's been an outstanding GitHub issue on that for 2 years now.
I thought they added that. So do you still not see invocations on both sides of the? Oh, okay. I thought they fixed that, or maybe that was just the SNS.
Well, according to the GitHub issue, it's still open. I'm subscribed to it, and every now and again somebody adds a +1 at the bottom. And
okay, right. I guess another one that was announced a few months before reInvent was the ARM support. I think the Bruno and the guys were talking about that support for Fargate just now, but the other support for Lambda. The funny thing is, like the performance numbers I get from those blog posts are quite different from a lot of the reports I've actually heard from people actually using ARM, or at least have tried to use ARM with Lambda in the real world. And a lot of the performance tests I've done myself has given me all kind of different numbers depending on your workload. So if you are thinking about using ARM for anything that's CPU intensive, then run your own test before you make a commitment, because even though it may be cheaper per millisecond, it may end up being more expensive because it's not as performant as x86 for your workload. But if you're just doing I/O work like most of my functions, then it probably is going to end up just 20% cheaper for free, because all my function does is run code DB and then just wait, and then so in that case you're just paying for I/O, wait time. So yeah, so for those use cases, I think ARM is great.
I think one of the things that happened over the last year was Cloudfront Functions as well, right? That's been a big performance improvement. I changed my blog to use Cloudfront Functions instead of Lambda at Edge, and got quite an improvement in performance and on obviously lower costs and so on. It's perhaps not the most beautiful programming model, like if you compare it to something like Cloudflare Workers, where you can use external node modules and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have any of that kind of good stuff. You have to write pretty old-fashioned JavaScript, and you can't use any external libraries. But man, it works. It's great.
Yeah, it's that the Lambda Edge does the operational overhead. I think that was always crazy as well. Like it's trying to find logs that's for functions that you deploy to Lambda Edge. They're all over the place, and just trying to collect the logs is a massive pain in the ass as well. But I do hope they bring more of the sort of, I guess, copy more of the features from Cloudflare Workers, because there's also the KV store, or these other data asset stuff that they're doing. Which makes the Cloudflare Workers still leaps and bounds a bit better compared to what we have right now with the sort of on edge offers from AWS.
Good. So obviously, we've got Werner's keynote coming up. Are there things that you're hoping he's going to announce that we've not had announced so far, or things that you think should be happening?
If there's one thing I could wish for, when you create a new AWS account, it wouldn't have any security findings in it in the AWS Security Hub. Like if you use Control Tower to create an account, it'd be really great if it didn't then immediately flag up in AWS Security Hub with a bunch of stuff that needs to be fixed. So I would just like there to be more automated tooling around that sort of, so I don't really have to deal with that stuff, right? I think there's like a big risk, if you like, in having an AWS account that you have this kind of big box of open world that you have to know quite a lot about to deal with. And it's okay if you're willing to invest, years of your time kind of studying on the stuff. But I really think we need to make a simpler world.
Cool. Lauren, anything in that sort of area for you?
So I guess less around the accounts stand up, but I guess more around the simpler world is, I guess, some improvements to AppSync and some Apollo features there, but also maybe parallels to some of the API gateway features and how APIs are handled through API gateway, to bring some parallels to the way they're managing AppSync, I think would be a real great thing from a usability perspective.
Cool. Manny?
Yes, secondly, what Adrian said about the account setup thing, I think we both worked on an account where we basically had that exact problem, right? And we sort of launched this new landing zone via Control Tower or whatever. And yes, you get some good guardrails out of the box, but the first thing you have to do is make a massive backlog of these are all security things we need to do. And then if you're in a regulated industry as well, you got to add all those in as well. And it's just sort of like, it's not busy work, it has to happen. And it's great if your engineers know how it all works, of course, but it would be nice to sort of tick some of that stuff off just by launching an AWS account and accept the cost involved with it as well. There is that secure environment accelerator from AWS, which sort of helps you with this, but that's more of a absolutely everything at once. And it's sort of what don't you want, which is a little too comprehensive. So somewhere in the middle that would be a happy medium would save a lot of that and sort of get customers moving a little bit faster, I think.
Okay. Oh, look, we're losing people's videos left, right, and centre here, but I don't know what's going on. Manny and Jan, we seem to have lost your video.
Yeah, it's just come off.
It says,
Dave's playing.
You can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, okay.
That's what I have.
Dave will sort us out. Come on, Dave, pick it up. So, right, one thing, so I think I started with you on that, didn't I, Adrian? I was going to come to Jan there he's back. So, Jan, any sort of predictions or hopes from the rest of reInvent in terms of announcements or new features?
Yeah, from my sort of day-to-day stuff, I use AppSync an awful lot. So I'm with Laura in terms of hoping to get a few updates on the AppSync, especially around some of the operational side of things. AppSync's got features pretty good, but the one side that is really not so great is the operational side of things in terms of better support for managing your logs and stuff like that, so that you don't get either nothing or down to 11, so that your Cloudwatch cost is going to be several times of everything else that you've got. But I think on the organization account side of things, I'd love for them to introduce some infrastructure as code support for organizations. For the last year and a half, I've been using this open source tool called Automation, which I think solves a lot of problems that Manny and Adrian mentioned in terms of having some way to create new accounts, but not with a control tower. With the account factory, there's a lot of clicking stuff in the console. But the Automation allows you to use a syntax that's like CloudFormation. But what it's really great at is the fact that you can reference resources from different accounts. So you can have templates that provision things to different accounts via what you call it, basically a binding, so that you can say, I've got this template. I want to create a S3 bucket in the audit account, and I want to enable CloudTrail in all the other accounts, but pointing them to the S3 bucket I provision in the other account there. And it's able to do this kind of across account, the referencing, and work out what resources to deploy first, and then get outputs, and then set up the other ones, and all of that stuff, which is what makes it really powerful. But it's an open source tool, and for something so critical, you kind of want to have some official support from AWS that lets you do something like this. So I'd love to see some support from AWS in that case. Otherwise, all these tools are great around organization, but it's just clicking stuff in the console. It's just I mean, in an environment where you got different teams, different people with different experiences, you can't expect people to click the right buttons in the right order all the time.
Yeah. Anyone got any follow up on that? No. So the next thing I was going to, so I don't want to rush you off past. If there's other announcements and sessions you want to talk about, then by all means do. One of the things I want to ask you about is, so Adrian, you mentioned your blog just before. Jan, I know you blog an enormous amount. You run lots of training sessions and stuff. If people are going to go somewhere for a kind of written summary and digest of all the best stuff to do with serverless, well, more generally, but also out of reInvent, where would they go? Where do you go for this, or you just write it yourselves?
Where do I read? I'm a sort of ardent Hacker News reader, which is probably not great for my for my social life. Pretty sad, I suppose. But I'm addicted to that stuff. I do enjoy reading just random stuff. The getting into the outrage in the technology world and the sort of audacious claims and so on. I think it's different in terms of what to read up on and things like that. I think I tend to be mostly interested in how people have approached different problems and how they've solved them. So I'm more interested in the kind of architecture, but you can't sort of necessarily lift and shift something that that somebody else has done, because it may not always fit what you're trying to achieve. So I think one of the nice things about serverless and the kind of ecosystem around it is that I have been able to pick up some bits and pieces, and quite a lot of them. So at the moment I'm working on creating insurance documentation. Great fun. We need a PDF solution, and somebody's bothered to make the sort of setup for running WK HTML inside Lambda and all that kind of stuff. I'm doing some work around sort of SFTP integrations and so on. And again, people have done the work to sort of open source their CDK stacks for adding IP whitelisting and all sorts of things. So I think really I tend to look for things that are kind of task related, so rather than general reading, I think.
Yep. Okay, cool. Manny, Jan?
I think, Manny, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the usual places like AWS Architecture Center has always been updated with new resources and information. Embarrassingly, some of the people on this call have them on LinkedIn, follow them, post lots of great stuff. You've actually helped me out on a couple of problems before. It's the serverless community isn't that big and it's growing fast. Connect with people on LinkedIn from AWS, the serverless heroes that we have in here as well. They're always posting stuff. That's it, really. There's not that much content, as I say, on the general internet, because this stuff's still pretty new. And as Adrian says, a lot of it is task-based. So yeah, connect with each other and share experiences, and we can keep it growing, I suppose. Yep.
Yeah, I think for if you're completely new to this space, I think reading like ad hoc task-based articles is not that useful. It takes many years of reading those small bits of pieces to actually form a picture of what and how everything fits together. So I think if you're new, then look for workshop and other like structured material that you can take. Take a couple of day workshop or something like that, and then that's going to get you into a much better starting point than you would do if you just read lots of articles how to do one thing versus another, especially when those things are not necessarily following some ideological sort of structure. So I would say, once you get to a certain point, you're kind of familiar with the space, then there is a lot of content out there already. I mean, I myself have written over 150 articles on serverless alone in the last couple of years, and get to the point where everything I wanted to say, kind of, I've already said it before. Writing less and less nowadays.
But the thing is, there's always a new audience for it.
New technology. Yeah.
Did you just say exactly what I said there, Adrian?
No, I said, but the technology will have shifted, right? Like, so that's the thing with the AWS world. Someone, like if you've ever done a well architecture review, then with 2,000 new changes coming out like every year, that's been the rate of change inside AWS across sort of 200 services nearly. That's a huge amount of change. So even something that was like really well done 3 years ago is unlikely to be making the best use of AWS today, because features have changed, things have moved on, constraints that were in place aren't there anymore. So it is difficult. I think Jan's completely right there. Like, what I do and how I work, with years of experience on that, is probably not going to do you any good. I think for me, what really helped me was doing things like the AWS developer exams and the DevOps Pro exams, and going through that, because it gives you a really good grounding, I think, in the in the broad range of tools that are at your disposal.
Yeah.
I also can't stress enough the value of just experimenting. Like new features come out, just give it a try, or think about how would this thing actually work if some obscure use case comes up. How would that fail? Because that's one of the things that you don't find in AWS documentations or most other content. Just how the things blow up. Which is actually really interesting once you think about, okay, that's how they intended for it to work, and then designing to experiment to see how would it work if some weird use cases comes up, and then that really helps you build up a mental model of how things under the hood works. Because ultimately, all of these services, they're not magic. They're all running on someone's written code, probably slightly better written than yours, but still, there's going to be that stuff that people haven't thought about, or it's just not designed for certain kind of workload. And it really helps build up that mental model that help you deeply understand how service works. If you just try to run some experiments, I love doing that stuff. And the great thing with serverless is that you're probably not going to pay for it because if you don't, unless you're doing like millions and millions of requests to this thing, it's probably going to come up like 20 cents on your AWS bill.
Although I will say there's a new feature released just this session, right, around the automated machine learning stuff, and one of the folks inside the Amazon APN ambassadors group was saying that he thinks he's just run up a $1,200 bill in one experiment by not reading the cost structures, which could be amusing for him.
Excellent.
I sense a new blog post coming up.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said you need to get onto Quinny Pig straight away.
Good. Right. So to summarize just on that bit, Manny mentioned the AWS heroes, and you've mentioned AWS ambassadors, and these are people that, so you're a hero, aren't you, Jan? And I think, Adrian, are you a hero or are you an ambassador? Or
I'm an Amazon ambassador, APN ambassador, because that means that I work for a partner group. It's supposed to be the same, but in terms of structure and so on.
Yeah. But these are people who kind of, part of that role is about sharing expertise, isn't it? And so I think that's a good steer from Manny there about go and find those people, follow them. They've almost certainly published some stuff on it, and following them and hearing their thoughts on stuff is a good way to get started in it, isn't it? Right. Good stuff. Have you got any final thoughts, or I'm going to tee Dave up to potentially play the Roving Reporter number 4 video that we had as a potential there. So I'm teeing him up just in case you guys say, yeah, we're all good here. Or if you've got more to talk about around serverless, then go for it. But otherwise, I will go to that video.
Just a last final thought for people that are completely new, as we were saying, have a look at event modeling, because using the AWS services, just using them is quite easy. Trying to achieve like a great customer outcome is hard. If you look at event modeling, it'll sort of help frame problems in a way which sort of lends itself nicely to serverless architecture, and it will sort of write itself in terms of how you'll structure those things. So yeah, for anyone that's completely new, have a look at event modeling.
Nice. Good. Final thoughts from you, Jan? Even if it's just thanks very much and goodbye.
Yeah, thanks very much. I enjoyed the rest of the conference.
Brilliant. That's good. Adrian?
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Awesome. There you go. Now, you see, in previous years, I don't know what's happened this year, people have come on with Christmas jumpers and stuff. Phil Basford has yet to arrive, so he may well be in a Christmas jumper. But it feels a long way off for me.
It does.
So,
it does.
Right. Great stuff. Thank you very much, guys. I'm sure everybody knows that if they've got questions, you'll be in either Slack or somewhere, and I'm sure you'll be happy to answer those questions. Lauren, by the way, had to drop off. No one viewing this would have been able to see the messages pop up, but she had to drop off. Thank you very much, Lauren, for taking part. First time in one of our events. It'd be great to have you back. Adrian, Jan, you've both been at many of our things in the past. Thank you again. And Manny, first time, thank you. Hope you'll come back and do another thing.
Absolutely. Cheers, Phil.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.